So in this lesson, I'm going to demonstrate a couple of things. First, we'll take a look at how to work with various colors and in fact have the user provide input. In other words, click of a mouse button would change the canvas to different colors. And of course, we will define these colors and we'll tell Python that whenever someone clicks on the canvas, it should change the color of the canvas itself. So that's our first task in this tutorial. The second aspect of this tutorial is I'm going to demonstrate how to drag a colored box on the canvas. This could be a colored box, this could be any object in fact. So I'm going to work with primarily the user input concept here so that you can drag items on the canvas. And this is helpful especially when you're into developing Python games or other complex code. So let's jump right in. Let me go ahead and begin. So I'm going to place a comment here first. So this example is going to change the screen color with a mouse click. Great. Let me go ahead and save this quick. So I'm going to say mouse click color.py. Of course, let's save it in our Python directory. This is right in our documents, data files, and Python. Great. So let's go ahead and do our import OS. And I'm going to import system or sys and the random as well. So primarily we're importing the OS, sys, and random so that we can use the OS for the environment, for example, and the sys for exiting, and then random for the rand int. Next, I'm going to import Pygame, and this module, as earlier mentioned in previous lessons, that it is required if you're developing, for example, games. This is a great module to work with. So import Pygame as PG, and I'm just going to call it PG. It's easier to use a short version, and it's good to abbreviate. So once I've specified import Pygame as PG, next I'm going to use the caption, and I'm going to set this to, let's say, click to change my color. Set my screen size, and this would be, let's say, 300, or make it a little bigger, about 500. Next, specify my class, so class app. My object goes in here, and again, this is now going to be our main class for our application. So it basically manages the events and the game loops that we're about to create. So my def would be, let's say, init self. Of course, I need a space in here. And I'm going to specify the references to the screen. For example, this is something that we create in the main. Define necessary attributes and set the starting color to black, for example, or it could be any color. So the screen would equal Pygame or PG in our instance display dot get surface, and what this does, it get references to the display. Okay, let me put a comment here. Get reference to the display. Next, self.clock, and this would be pg.time.clock, and what this would do is create basically a clock to restrict our frame rate. Okay, so let me put a comment here. So create a clock to restrict frame rate. Next would be self.frames per second or FPS. I'm going to set that to 60. Self.done equals false. And this is just a flag to tell our game that we're creating when to quit. Specify the self.keys equals pg.key.get, and then pressed, because we would like to specify that all the keys currently held. So this would be something like all keys currently held. And then finally our self.color, and this would equal pygame.color, and this is again setting our initial background color. So I'm going to say black. My next definition would be the event loop itself, and basically our event loop called once every frame, right? So only things relevant to processing specific events should be here, and that's all we're going to do here. So within this event loop, we're going to put a for event in pygame or pg.event.get, and this will simply check the event in the event queue. And if that's the case, it's going to do if event.type equals pg.quit or self.keys. So two conditions here, right? So self.keys, and I'm going to specify pg.k_escape. So if I were to click on the escape key, for example, the window would close. So scroll down here a little bit. So if the user presses escape or closes the window, then we're done, right? So we're going to specify self.done to be true. Elif event type equals pg dot mouse button down, right? So if you were to use your mouse, you could do so. So mouse button down, and if the user basically clicks the screen, it changes the color, and this is what we're going to put here. So self.color would equal the random, right? This is where our random would come in. So random.rand int to be 0 and 255, and for in range, let's say 3, elif one more time, and this time this will be event.type in pg dot key up, and then pg dot key down. And next, basically this would update keys right when a key is pressed or released, and this is something that we need to specify and tell Python that self keys would equal pg dot key dot get pressed. Our next definition would be for the main loop. So let's do that. Main loop, space in here, self, and this would basically call the event loop, updates the display, and restricts the frame rate and loops. So within this, we're going to say a while loop here. So while not self done, Python should do a self event loop, and this is going to run the event loop every frame, right? Next would be the self screen dot fill with self color, and then pg dot display, and then update, and of course the self dot clock tick, and we specify the self dot frames per second, so fps, and this simply restricts the frame rate for the program. So we do the main, forgot the def here, scroll down. Next, we're going to prepare our environment, create a display, and basically start the program. That's what we're going to do next here. So this would be os.environment, and then we specify the SDL video to be, let's say, centered, and this would equal 1, And again, this simply creates the window, and this is optional, by the way. Okay, so let me put a comment here. Create the window, and this is optional. So if you want to use this, that's fine. So next would be the pg init. This initializes the Pygame. pg.display.setMyCaptions, and this time my caption is set. Next, I'm going to do the pg.display.setMyMode to my screen size, and then do finally the app.mainLoop to the pgQuit, and of course sysexit. Alright, let me try that again. pg.quit, set of parentheses, and then of course my sys.exit with a set of parentheses. And finally, let's do the if main, or if name rather, equals main, then do the main parentheses. Perfect. So here's our code for simply creating a canvas where user would provide the input, clicks on the canvas, and it changes the color. And the initial canvas would be black background, and so on. So let's test it out. Let me go ahead and save this. Let's run it. Okay, let's take a look at line 48 and 43. What's going on? All right, line 48 is our main and 43 is our app, and then our main loop. So it says app is not defined. Let's see, where did we miss our app? So let's check to see. Let's scroll up here. Let's see if our class app is here. So we have our object. So we have the class object, which is fine. Scroll down. We have our event loop. Scroll down a little more. And then we created the event loop. We have our main loop also created. Then we created our main definition and preparing our environment, basically creating a display, and start the program. Alright, let's scroll up for a little while and let's fix up our main def, the indentation. So let me quickly go ahead and make sure, because our main definition needs to be on its own. Alright, great. So let's save it and run it. Perfect. So this is our problem. So notice as I click on the canvas, the color would change. So as soon as I click and click multiple times, each time it will just pick a random color. If I use my wheel on the mouse, right, the scrolling wheel, if you have that mouse, you'll notice the colors would change also. If I hit the escape key on the keyboard, it's gonna finish and close the canvas. So this way you can create a screen and have user click on it to change the color. Great. Next, let me go ahead and move forward, demonstrate how to create a box, colored box, for example, and then use the drag options in Python. So we are going to create code that is going to open up the canvas, create a colored box, and then the user will provide input by holding the mouse button down and dragging the box anywhere on the screen. So let me go ahead and click on Control N to open up our new file.